James Kaufman, World News Report today, July 7th, 2025. God bless you and yours, no matter where you are in the world. Please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell for critical future updates. Ladies and gentlemen, according to our KP indexes, we've been in and out of a geomagnetic storm and disturbance for the last 2 days. We'll start out looking at our estimated planetary index, the updated index that NOAA and NASA use exclusively. And basically it tells us that yesterday we had 6 hours of a geomagnetic storm, the red bars, and 6 hours of a geomagnetic disturbance, followed today by 3 more hours of a geomagnetic storm, and that followed by 3 hours of a geomagnetic disturbance. Now, I want y'all to see that this is all in the beginning of the day here. We can look at our other KP indexes, and what these show us is a summary of a combination of solar winds and plasma hitting Earth at any given 3-hour time period. Each bar represents a 3-hour time period. If you look at our bolder KP index, it's actually a little bit elevated because of where it's located, and it looks like 9 hours of a geomagnetic disturbance yesterday, and at the end of the day they picked up a geomagnetic storm for 3 hours. We started today out with a G2 geomagnetic storm today for 3 hours, followed by a G1 geomagnetic storm and no disturbances. Please again note that that's in the beginning of the day and late yesterday. We can look at our Fredericksburg and we see, well, yesterday it looks like we had 6 hours of a geomagnetic disturbance, 3 hours of a geomagnetic storm, followed this morning by 3 hours of another G1 geomagnetic storm, and that was followed by a geomagnetic disturbance. Moving down to the most sensitive KP index, our college index, well, it says we were off the hook on the 6th yesterday with 12 hours of a geomagnetic storm and 6 hours of a geomagnetic disturbance. 3 of those hours were a G2 geomagnetic storm, followed today by a total of 6 hours of a geomagnetic disturbance. Please note the pattern late yesterday and early this morning that all KP indexes are following here. Taking a little closer look at our estimated planetary KP index. In summary, we've had 9 hours of a geomagnetic storm, a G1, over the last 48 hours. Now we do have disturbances here, here, and here. So 9 more hours of disturbances also over the last 48 hours. I wanted to check NOAA's work for obvious reasons. So the best I can do is the German KP index here, and it reads almost identical to the estimated planetary KP index, with, of course, as we discussed, 9 hours of a geomagnetic storm, G1, and 9 hours in the heavy green of a geomagnetic disturbance all over the last 48 hours. There's huge problems with that because there's been no solar flaring and no coronal holes Earth facing. Taking a look at our GOES X-ray flux. Looking at the last 3 days, we've had absolutely no activity, down to a B baseline and some very small C flares. Taking a look at the last 7 days, absolutely no activity whatsoever. You may recall NOAA called for a geomagnetic storm on the 2nd and 3rd of July, which never occurred. Here we have no stimuli whatsoever, and there was no coronal hole Earth facing. Taking a look at our star via GOES 19 solar ultraviolet imager, 195 angstroms, the only thing that even closely resembles a coronal hole, which could not be responsible for what we're seeing, is this situation right here. Now this is a coronal hole coming around the limb, but it is yet to be Earth facing. I will show you now the sunspots associated with our star currently. Moving over to HMI intensigram, we see that we have very simple sunspots currently Earth-facing, and there's almost no probability of having a solar flare all day long today. We see that we have a total of 6 sunspots, although at least one of them, maybe 2 of them, are headed around the limb today. Now we do have active sunspots coming around the limb to become Earth-facing, as you can see right here, but those are yet to be named. Taking a look at NOAA's KP Index breakdown, the forecast for July 7th, 8th, and 9th, 2025, we can instantly see it's been Monday morning quarterbacked. They've gone in today on the 7th and redone it and covered that G1 storm that occurred during the first 3 hours. Remember that, the first 3 hours of today, July 7th. When we look at our Discover A satellites, well, it's going to be real hard to justify. We should be seeing a geomagnetic storm down here towards the end of the day, as you will see, but that's not what they forecast. They did this after the fact, and you can see it says July 7th, meaning they did it today. Taking a look at NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center, remember we paid millions of dollars to upgrade this last year. They predicted, and this has not been updated today, but a few days ago, that plasma would start the day off at about 5 and end the day off at about 2, and that solar winds would start the day off at about 400 kilometers per second and end the day at about 500 kilometers per second. So 4 to 5 and 5 to 2, right? That was their prediction. So I guess they didn't think that there'd be any type of solar storm whatsoever either. That makes 2 of us. So let's take a look at the beginning of the day here. We have solar winds at the beginning of the day at 400 kilometers per second. No possible way that any solar winds throughout here could have caused a geomagnetic disturbance or storm. And we can look at yesterday as well. Also want y'all to look at the plasma up here. Remember, they went from 5 to 2. Well, here it is at 7, and then it goes down to 2, and back up to 9. 10 being the breakout for a geomagnetic storm possibility. But I've never seen a geomagnetic storm with a 10, 12, 15 centimeters cubed of plasma. All right, we'll follow this through, and there it breaks through and gives us a 12.99. Now remember, this is more than 3 hours into the day. This is going to be exactly 4.5 hours into the day. So this would be our second KP index bar, if you will. So this is a very light situation, and solar winds would be making no play. Now, I don't see any filament eruptions or any solar flares, and haven't hit GOES X-ray flux for, well, 7 days, 10 days, longer than that. The last one was on the 28th, and it was a C5.55, which never came to fruition. Now we have a couple of odd bumps here. 15.29 plasma, but for 1 minute. And then plasma drops off to 2. So remember, they had it starting at 5 and ended up at 2. And now it's pretty much where they said it would be, right? So the plasma is not playing any role in this whatsoever. Now remember, we had solar winds starting at 400 and going up to 500. Well, it looks like they did a pretty good job here. But we know that the KP index said that this is the time period when we had our geomagnetic storm and disturbance, right? The first 6 hours of the day. Well, solar winds are way down here, 400, and I believe that there's some 300s in here as well. very, very weak 397, very, very weak solar wind speed here. And the reason I'm showing all this to you is because there's no reason that we should be seeing a geomagnetic storm or disturbance whatsoever based on our two satellites, Discover or ACE. We're about to look at ACE. And you can see that the solar winds do climb up here, and they did guess that they would, but they went all the way to or above 600, not up to 500 kilometers per second, which is, well, a difference of 268,000 miles an hour. From their forecast of 500 kilometers per second. Now, towards the end of the day, where we're at right now, we should be seeing, perhaps at 600, 631 here, a geomagnetic disturbance, maybe even a G1, but it's real hard to make one out back here. What we will do is take a look at yesterday as well to see if we see, well, what could have caused all the havoc yesterday. So, taking a look at a 3-day window. Yesterday starts right here, and you can see that there's no plasma that would have caused. There is an anomaly, 1 minute right here. 1 minute of 40.67. But you can see that the day starts here, and the plasma is fairly normal. Here's another anomaly of 17.18. Nothing that could have caused all of the disturbances and storms that we saw. Remember, that's for only 1 minute. And our shields appear to be up the entire time. Now, we are seeing solar winds shoot over 600 kilometers per second. What could have caused that? Well, I guess they're going to start to argue that little coronal hole caused it, but listen, the KP index doesn't show anything occurring during any of this time period throughout here. We just looked at it, and we'll look again if necessary. Now, temperatures have remained up and down, but fairly normal. What we were looking for is something right around here. And we have a little bit of plasma, but we're talking about just barely breaking through the space weather threshold 2 or 3 times here. And that's where the big event occurred. Right through here. Remember the last 3 hours, these 3 hours right here, of yesterday, the 6th, and the first 3 hours of today. But we only saw plasma density at 10 centimeters, 11 centimeters cubed. If that causes a G1 geomagnetic storm, we're in huge trouble if we see an actual solar flare or filament eruption create a coronal mass ejection that is headed directly towards Earth. This tells us that we have absolutely no atmosphere whatsoever. Perhaps our F and E regions of our atmosphere are completely gone at this point. That's exactly what this looks like. Now, no one can explain why solar winds are on the uptick this hard, and the KP index does not show any disturbance or storm at this time period. Let's go back and take a look. And remember, their KP forecast that they Monday morning quarterback doesn't show anything like that at all either towards the end of the day. And we're at 1900 UTC time today right now. So we're about 4 hours, 5 hours from the end of the day. So here we are waiting for that next bar to drop. It better be a huge one. We're seeing the solar winds pop up here. What caused this? I guess 10 centimeters cubed in plasma caused these G1 KP 5.33 geomagnetic storms for 6 hours, followed by this geomagnetic disturbance for 3 hours. Remember what we saw. Solar winds at 400 kilometers per second and plasma no greater than 11 or 12 centimeters cubed. Big questions, folks. And remember, NOAA's KP index forecast for July 7th, 8th, and 9th, well, it was Monday morning quarterback. And they went in and put that G1 down there. Now, they have a KP2 and 1, and this would be the last 6 hours of the day, which we're already into. I think these are going to be much higher based on the solar wind uptick. Question is where did the solar wind come from? Or is it cosmic wind? I don't think that anyone at NOAA can answer any of these questions. That's the reason I've been kicked out of NASA's and NOAA's groups for asking simple questions just like this. So remember, we were warned about a geomagnetic storm for the 2nd and the 3rd based on the C5.55 solar flare, and no warning came about for any type of coronal hole problems or any type of solar flare or filament problems. And they did, i.e. Monday morning quarterback, and put this together after the fact when they got this one number correct. The rest of it, I'm sure, will be completely off. I hope y'all are keeping up, because someone's lying to someone and it's not me. So here, the beginning of the day, well, here is the geomagnetic storm that we had for 6 hours right here. What caused the plasma, since there was no solar flares and no filament eruptions and no warnings whatsoever? Only the Monday morning quarterback of the KP index forecast. What caused it? Your guess is going to be as good as mine, but look how low the temperature is during that time period. Temperature is supposed to rise when plasma hits from the sun. I'm thinking that this might be something that, else is happening here. Remember, these solar winds are at 400 kilometers per second, and then they slowly have moved up to almost 600, just over 600 kilometers per second. We're using ACE, another older satellite, to check our work from Discover, the new satellite. You can see that as the solar winds do rise, we have our temperature rising as well. But this is real anomaly when our plasma shoots up here, just barely breaking the space weather threshold. The temperature shoots down to almost nothing. Should be just the opposite here. All I have is questions here, folks. This negative 600 would be solar activity hitting Earth. Earth is the little black and white ball. Our atmosphere is the gray. And there is really no bow shock here, i.e. negative 600 kilometers per second. What there is, however, and this is millions of miles an hour, is positive 600 kilometers per second. These winds behind Earth are running right by Earth. Earth's moving to the left here at 67,000 miles an hour, and also coming at you, being pulled by our star at 544,000 miles an hour, according to mainstream science. But these winds at 600 kilometers per second are moving to the left in a positive direction. And what does that equate to? These winds coming up from behind our planet are moving at over 1.3 million miles an hour. And since they're off the chart here, they could be going a lot faster than that. This is a completely ridiculous situation. I don't know what is causing winds to be coming from the rear of our planet at 1.3 plus million miles an hour currently. But that's what we see here. All right, as y'all can see here, nothing is behind planet Earth on its dark side, if you will, or nighttime side. What we have is the moon back there, but it's not causing 1.3 million miles an hour winds. Now, what do we have? We have a botched forecast for the 2nd and 3rd from the C5.55 that never occurred, And now we have a geomagnetic disturbance and storm over a two-day period with no cause in sight. I wish someone from NOAA or NASA would tell me what's really going on. We must have another source of energy. Solar winds, cosmic winds, something. Plasma that's not our sun, i.e. maybe coming from behind Earth. God bless you guys. Please share, subscribe, and always remember that anything's obviously possible in Bizarro World.